The small exploration ship drifted quietly through the endless black of space. Its hull was simple, worn by years of travel yet still reliable. Inside, the crew of 4 humans worked without hurry. They were not soldiers and they were not traders. They were explorers, sent out to map unknown systems and bring back knowledge. Their journey had taken them far from familiar routes. The stars outside the windows were strange, brighter and closer than those they had known before. The navigation system showed nothing about this sector. There were no records, no routes, no warnings. It was a blank place on every chart. Aaron, the captain, leaned over the main console. He was calm, with steady eyes that had seen long years of space. He liked quiet places like this, far away from the noise of known space. His crew trusted his silence. Next to him sat Leon, the pilot, who loved the way new skies looked on the scanners. Behind them stood Mira, who studied old languages, and Solon, the engineer who fixed whatever broke. The ship slowed as the scanners picked up something strange. A planet appeared on the display, dark and heavy. It had no shining oceans and no thick clouds. The surface was rough, covered in deep ridges and long shadows. It looked like a world that had been forgotten before it was ever known. "There is energy down there," Leon said. His voice was sharp with interest. Not strong, but steady. Something is alive or something is waiting. Aaron narrowed his eyes. Energy on a dead world meant only 2 things. Someone lived there or someone had left something behind. Either answer meant a discovery. They guided the ship toward the surface. As the craft broke through the thin atmosphere, the crew saw endless plains of black stone. Sharp ridges cut across the land like scars. Valleys stretched for miles, empty and silent. Then they saw it. On the side of a mountain, half buried in shadow, there was an opening. The scanner showed metal beneath the rock, a structure not made by nature. The signal was coming from there, steady and patient. The crew landed nearby. The air outside was thin but breathable with masks. When they stepped onto the ground, their boots sank into dust that had not been touched for ages. Every sound seemed too loud against the heavy silence. The entrance waited at the base of the mountain. It was wide, tall enough for giants and lined with golden metal that shone faintly even in the dark. The humans felt a quiet pull as they walked closer. Inside, the walls stretched high above them. The corridor was smooth, lined with golden plates that reflected their lights. The silence was deep, not empty but full, as if it carried the weight of voices long gone. They walked slowly, each step echoing. The corridor led them downward, deeper into the mountain. No dust lay on the floor. No cracks touched the walls. It was as if the place had been sealed and guarded from time itself. Then the corridor opened into a chamber. The humans stopped at the threshold, their lights sweeping across the space. The chamber was vast, round, and endless. Its walls glowed faintly with golden light, as if the metal itself remembered the sun. And in those walls were skulls, thousands of them. Each skull was set carefully into the golden surface. They were not human. Some were long and thin, others wide and curved. Some had many eyes, others only one. None looked the same. Yet each was placed with care, as though honored. The humans did not feel fear. They felt awe. The chamber was not a grave made in anger. It was a place of memory. Mira stepped closer. She reached out a hand but did not touch. "These are not random," she whispered. "This is a record. A library of lives." Solon studied the floor. The gold beneath their feet was patterned with lines, shapes, and symbols. They curved like rivers, flowing toward the center of the chamber. There in the heart of the room stood a tall pillar made of the same golden metal. It was smooth, silent, and waiting. Aaron walked around it slowly. He did not rush. He had seen ruins before, but nothing like this. Every skull seemed to watch him, not with anger but with patience. They were waiting for someone who would not turn away. The crew spread out, each moving carefully, speaking softly as if in a place of worship. Mira knelt beside one of the golden symbols. She traced its curve with her finger. "This writing is not familiar, but it feels like a language. Not words we can read yet, but meaning is here. Whoever built this wanted to speak across time." Leon lifted his light higher, letting it shine on the rows of skulls. 10,000, he said slowly. "Maybe more. Each one belongs to a different kind. This is not one people honoring their own. This is a gathering of many." The silence thickened. The crew felt the weight of the chamber press against their hearts. Aaron touched the pillar in the center. It was cool, smooth, and alive with faint energy. The scanners on his wrist lit up with unreadable signals. Something inside the pillar stirred, faint and steady. "This is the source," Arun said quietly. "This is what called us here." No one argued. They all felt it. The pillar was not just a piece of stone. It was a voice, a presence waiting to be heard. Mira stepped closer. It might be a message. Maybe a test, Solon frowned. Or a warning. Aaron kept his hand on the pillar. He did not feel danger. He felt weight, like holding a history too large for his hands. He knew this place was not meant to frighten. It was meant to remember. The humans stood together at the center of the chamber. The golden light reflected in their eyes. Thousands of skulls shone from the walls, silent witnesses to this meeting. And in that silence, the crew of 4 felt something stir. Not in the air, but in their minds. It was faint, a whisper of thought that was not their own. The chamber had seen them. The chamber had been waiting. The silence was no longer empty. It was alive. The silence inside the chamber grew heavier with each passing moment. The humans stood near the golden pillar, their lights glinting off the walls where skulls rested in endless rows. Nothing moved. No sound came from the air. Yet every member of the crew felt a presence around them, as though the place was not empty but waiting. Aaron kept his hand on the pillar. The cool metal hummed faintly beneath his palm. He looked at his crew and saw the same unease written on their faces. Mira's eyes stayed on the golden symbols carved into the floor. Leon kept glancing at the rows of skulls, unable to look for long without feeling a strange pressure in his chest. Solon studied the walls, though his hands moved restlessly as if he wanted to fix something but could not. "It is not dead," Arun said softly. His voice echoed in the vast chamber. "This place is still alive." Before anyone could answer, the golden lines carved across the floor began to glow. The light was gentle, not harsh, spreading slowly like rivers of fire under glass. It flowed toward the pillar and climbed its surface until the entire structure glowed with steady brilliance. The crew stepped back, shielding their eyes. Then the light dimmed to a soft shine, enough to see clearly but not blinding. A sound filled the chamber, but it was not sound in the air. It was sound in their minds, a tone without words that pressed against their thoughts. Mira gasped and clutched her head, but Arun steadied her. The tone was not painful. It was simply vast, too large to be carried by one mind alone. Then came the first shape of meaning. It was not language, not symbols, but thought made into weight. Images and feelings poured into them. Stars being mapped, ships sailing through darkness, builders carving golden halls, and then the skulls placed one by one into the walls, each honored, each remembered. The crew stood in silence, letting the visions wash over them. "They are speaking," Mira whispered, "or maybe showing. This is their way of telling us who they were." Aaron nodded. He did not understand all of it, but he felt the truth. This chamber was not built to frighten. It was built to preserve memory, to carry voices across ages. The vision shifted. The humans saw gatherings of many species, each different yet standing together. They saw them bring their dead, not as prisoners but as honored ones. Warriors, thinkers, singers, explorers, all placed into the chamber to join the circle of remembrance. The builders had created this place not for themselves alone, but for all who dared to share in their silence. But then the visions darkened. Stars went out, ships burned, voices fell silent, and at last the builders themselves walked into the chamber, carrying their own last ones, laying them into the golden walls. When they were finished, they sealed the place and left nothing outside but shadow. The light on the pillar dimmed. The visions ended. The silence returned, heavier than before. The humans looked at one another. Their faces were pale, their breaths uneven. What they had seen was too large to hold, yet it had been given to them without hesitation. "They are gone," Leon said quietly. "They built this and then they ended." "Not ended," Mira corrected. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were bright. "Remembered. They built this so they would not be forgotten. They gave their memory to anyone brave enough to listen." Solon crossed his arms. "Why us, then why not others before us?" Aaron looked at the pillar again. He understood the question, but not the answer. Still, he felt something in his chest, a quiet certainty. "Because we stayed," he said. "Others may have turned back. We did not." The silence pressed again, and the light of the chamber pulsed faintly as if agreeing. The humans set up small beacons at the edge of the chamber, gentle lights to mark their path back to the ship. They wanted to study more, but none wished to damage anything. Instead, they worked with care, scanning the walls, recording every detail. Mira traced the golden writing with her eyes, slowly matching patterns. Though the language was strange, she began to see connections. This is not only history, she said after long hours. It is instruction, a kind of teaching. The builders wanted those who came after to learn, not just to watch. She pointed to a section where curved lines met at sharp angles. This speaks of silence and gold. Silence means memory. Gold means unity. Together they made a strength greater than any single world. Aaron listened. He did not always follow the symbols, but he trusted Mira's instinct. She had studied many lost languages, and her eyes carried patience. Leanne walked the edge of the chamber, pausing at each skull. "They are so different," he murmured. "Some of them must have come from far away. How did they bring them all here?" Solon answered without looking up. "They must have traveled far. A network of worlds, maybe more than we know. This chamber could be the heart of something greater." Aaron heard the weight in Solon's voice. He knew what his engineer meant. If this was only one chamber, there might be others, hidden on other worlds, waiting. The thought made his chest tighten. As they worked, the silence shifted again. This time it was not visions, but feelings that pressed against them. A question without words settled in their minds, steady and patient. Aaron spoke aloud, though he knew the chamber did not need his voice. "You ask who we are? We are human. We came because we seek what is hidden. We came because we do not turn back when faced with silence." The golden wall shone brighter. The presence in the air deepened, as if the chamber itself breathed. The skulls seemed to glow faintly, not with life, but with welcome. Mira's eyes filled with quiet wonder. "It understands us," she whispered. The crew stood together in the center of the chamber. They felt small yet not unworthy. For the first time, they understood that this was not only a monument of the past, it was also a bridge toward the future. The builders had vanished, but they had left behind a voice, a question, and a test. Not of strength, but of patience. Not of power, but of memory. The humans had listened. The silence was no longer empty. It had become a bond. The chamber did not stay still after the humans gave their answer. The golden walls pulsed gently as though alive, and the skulls seemed to lean closer in the faint light. The pillar in the center glowed brighter, and the golden lines carved into the floor spread outward until the whole chamber shone like the inside of a star. Aaron raised his hand to signal his crew. They gathered close, their eyes wide with both fear and wonder. None of them spoke loudly. They knew they were standing inside something older than memory, and every sound seemed to carry weight. The silence changed. It no longer felt like an empty space. It pressed against them, filled with questions unspoken. Then the chamber stirred their thoughts again, not with voices but with images. At first the humans saw stars, endless stars turning above them, moving across the sky like rivers of fire. Then the stars faded, replaced by memories not their own. A figure stood in front of them, tall and graceful, with a face that was not human. It held a tool of gold and carved shapes into a wall of black stone. The feeling that filled the humans was patience, the patience of one who works for generations. The vision shifted. Now there were many figures, all from different worlds. Some were small and thin, others large and heavy, yet all stood together in a great hall. They placed their dead into golden walls, each one with care. The humans felt honor, not grief, as though the act was not about loss but about joining something eternal. Then the visions grew heavy. Darkness came. Whole skies burned away. Worlds fell silent. The chamber showed them sorrow, the kind of sorrow that crushed whole civilizations. The humans staggered beneath the weight of it. Mira pressed her hands to her face, unable to hold back tears. Leon sank to one knee, his breath unsteady. Solon gritted his teeth as though carrying a weight on his shoulders. Aaron stood firm, though his chest felt heavy. He knew this was not only a story, it was a test. The builders had placed their memories here, not as records alone, but as a trial for any who came after. The pillar pulsed with golden light, and the silence spoke again. This time it was not a vision of others, but of themselves. Mira gasped. She saw her own childhood, a small home under the sky of Earth. She saw her family's faces, their hopes, and their final moments before she had left for the stars. The chamber made her live it again, but heavier, sharper, as if pressing her heart with all the weight of absence. Solon saw long years in the engine bays of ships, working without thanks, carrying burdens without end. He saw himself alone, holding tools that felt too heavy, The chamber pressed the feeling of isolation into his bones, showing him the strength he had lost and the times he had thought of giving up. Leon saw himself as a boy, standing at the edge of a wide desert on his homeworld colony. He had dreamed of flying, of touching the stars, but the chamber showed him years of waiting, years of being told he could not. It showed him the feeling of being trapped, the ache of dreams denied. Aaron saw himself not as captain but as a young man leaving Earth for the first time. He had looked back at his world, bright and blue, and felt both joy and loss. The chamber showed him that moment again and again, pressing the question of why he had left, pressing the doubt of whether he had chosen right. The chamber gave them silence after each vision, waiting for their answer. Mira lifted her head first. Her eyes were wet but steady. "I will not turn away," she whispered. "The pain is part of who I am. To forget it would be to forget myself." The golden walls pulsed once, faintly, as if acknowledging her answer. Solon placed a hand on the floor to steady himself. His voice was low, almost broken but firm. "I was alone many times, but I am not alone now. If the builders ask whether I can carry the weight, I will say yes, but only because I carry it with others." The light grew warmer. Leon clenched his fists. His face was pale, but his eyes burned. Dreams are heavy when they are far away, but they are still worth reaching. If the chamber wants to know why we endure, it is because we keep walking even when the path is long. The pillar shone brighter, like a sun rising within the chamber. Arun looked at his crew. He saw them not as explorers, but as survivors. He placed his hand once more on the pillar. "We are human. We do not run from memory. We carry it. We fall and rise again. That is our answer." The silence broke like a wave. The golden light flooded the chamber until it felt like standing in daylight. The skulls glowed softly, their hollow eyes shining not with fear but with calm acceptance. The presence in the chamber pressed close, no longer testing but acknowledging. The crew stood in the center, weary but unbroken. They had been shown their deepest fears, their hidden pain, their heaviest memories, yet they had endured. The light dimmed slowly until the chamber returned to its quiet glow. The pillar stood steady, its energy calm and patient. The trial was not over, but the first step had been taken. Mira wiped her face and managed a small smile. "It was not meant to break us. It was meant to see if we would stand." Solon let out a long breath. "I do not know how many before us failed, but I understand why. It is easier to walk away than to carry the weight." Leon looked at the skulls set into the walls. They carried it, and now they ask us to do the same. Aaron stood tall, his voice steady. "Then we will. Whatever comes next, we will face it together." The chamber seemed to listen. The silence settled into calm, as though the builders themselves were nodding in agreement. The humans did not know what lay ahead, but they understood one truth. The chamber was not only a monument of gold and silence, it was also a mirror, one that showed them who they truly were, and in that reflection the builders had found their answer. The chamber had grown calm after the visions ended, but the humans knew the trial was not finished. The skulls on the walls seemed to shine brighter than before, and the golden pillar in the center still pulsed with energy, waiting for something more. The silence was not empty now. It was the silence of a question that demanded another answer. Aaron studied the glowing floor and the endless rows of skulls. He felt the weight of every life that had been placed here. Each one carried history. Each one carried meaning. The builders had tested their memories and their ability to endure sorrow, but there had to be something greater. A monument of this scale was not built only to measure endurance. It was built to measure what could grow from it. Mira moved slowly along the walls, tracing the golden lines that curved like rivers. She stopped when she reached a section where the symbols gathered around a circle. She placed her hand against the design and closed her eyes. "This is not just memory," she said. "It is also creation. The builders wanted those who came here to add something of their own." Solon frowned, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Add what we are not like them. We cannot place our dead here. We cannot carve gold into the walls." Mira shook her head. "Not with our hands. With our minds. Look at the pattern. It speaks of silence filled with voices, of gold shaped into meaning. This is not about stone or metal. It is about what we bring to silence." Before Aaron could answer, the chamber shifted again. The golden light rose higher, flooding the floor and climbing the walls. The air grew heavy with energy. The crew felt the silence enter their thoughts once more, but this time it carried no sorrow. It carried possibility. The chamber showed them empty shapes, incomplete forms, half-drawn figures of worlds and beings. The images pulsed faintly as if waiting to be finished. Then the silence pressed the question into their minds. What can you make? Leon was the first to understand. They want us to build, he said. Not with tools, but with imagination. The golden light swirled, and the half-formed shapes stretched before them like canvases of air. The trial had begun. Mira stepped forward. She thought of Earth, the rivers that ran like silver threads, the trees that reached toward the sky, the laughter of children running through grass. The images appeared in the light, faint but real, drawn out of her memory. She gasped but did not stop. She shaped the silence with her thoughts, and the chamber held it like clay. Solon followed. He thought of ships, not grand ones, but small ones he had repaired with his hands. He thought of the sound of engines running smooth after long effort, the pride of something broken made whole again. The golden light shaped itself into ships, steady and simple, moving through the air. Leon closed his eyes. He thought of flight, the freedom he had dreamed of as a child standing under the wide desert sky. He thought of stars, not as cold fire, but as friends, distant yet calling. The chamber drew his dream into shape, filling the silence with glowing paths of light that stretched into endless space. At last, Aaron stepped forward. He thought of people, not powerful or famous, but ordinary ones working together, helping one another, sharing burdens. He thought of his crew, of Mira's patience, Solon's strength, and Leon's courage. He thought of how humanity endured not through power, but through unity. The golden light answered him, forming images of hands joined together, reaching across distance, binding silence with connection. The chamber responded with warmth. The golden walls pulsed in rhythm with the crew's hearts. The skulls glowed softly as though smiling. The pillars shone so bright it filled the chamber like a sun. But the trial was not yet complete. The images began to shift, twisting, pulling apart. The silence pressed again, asking not only what they could make, but whether they could hold it together. The humans felt resistance in their minds, as if the chamber itself was testing the strength of their creations. Mira's rivers began to dry, fading into dust. Solon's ships cracked and broke, their forms dissolving. Leon's stars dimmed one by one. Arun's joined hands loosened, slipping apart. The crew staggered under the pressure. It was not only imagination but will that was being tested. To create was easy for a moment. To keep it alive in the face of silence was harder. Mira clenched her fists and spoke aloud. I will not let it fade. Rivers flow because they find a way. If the ground is dry, they cut a path. If the rocks are strong, they carve deeper. They do not stop. The rivers flared back to life, running clear and strong. Solon set his jaw. A ship is more than metal. It is hope. I will not see it break. If one part fails, I repair it. If it falls, I lift it again. That is what I do. His ships grew solid once more, steady and shining. Leon lifted his head and shouted into the silence. Stars do not vanish. Even when hidden, they burn. Even when far, they call. I will follow them no matter how dark the sky. His stars blazed again, brighter than before. Aaron reached out with both hands, not to the pillar but to his crew. He spoke firmly, his voice carrying through the chamber. Hands do not stay together by force. They stay together by choice. We are here because we choose one another. That is why we endure. His image of unity strengthened, binding their visions together. The chamber pulsed with golden light. The resistance faded, replaced by calm warmth. The silence no longer tested. It accepted. The incomplete shapes filled with life, blending into one great image. Rivers flowing under stars, ships sailing across them, people working together. It was not perfect, but it was alive. The skulls on the walls glowed more brightly than ever. For a moment, the humans felt as if they were surrounded not by death, but by countless lives watching and approving. The builders had asked for memory and had received it. They had asked for endurance and had seen it. Now they had asked for creation, and the humans had answered. The pillar dimmed slowly until it returned to its steady glow. The chamber grew quiet once more, but it was no longer a silence of questions. It was the silence of trust. Mira exhaled, her shoulders shaking with relief. We did it, she whispered. Solon nodded, though his face was pale. It was not strength alone. It was all of us together. Leon's eyes still shone with light. We gave them something. A spark. Aaron stood tall, though he felt weary. and they gave us their welcome. The builders did not only want to see who we were, they wanted to see if we could add to what they began. We have shown them we can. The crew looked around the chamber. The golden walls glowed softly like a heart still beating. The skulls rested in silence, but their silence was no longer cold. It was warm, filled with approval. For the first time since entering the mountain, the humans felt not like strangers but like guests. The chamber had accepted them, yet Aaron knew it was not the end. The builders had one more question, one more trial. The chamber had tested their memory, their endurance, their creativity. What came next would be greater still, but for now the humans stood together in the glow of the chamber, their hearts steady, their hands joined not by fear but by choice. The spark of humanity had been seen and the chamber had answered. The chamber settled into a calm unlike any the humans had felt before. The golden walls shone softly, illuminating every skull and every line of the intricate floor patterns. The pillar in the center glowed with steady light, neither bright nor dim, but alive with quiet presence. Aaron, Mira, Leon, and Solon stood in the center, exhausted, but unbroken. They had endured the visions, faced the weight of memory, and created shapes of hope and unity. Each of them felt a deep connection with the chamber, as though the silence had become a living companion. For a long moment, nothing happened. The golden light spread across the walls and floor, yet no movement came from the pillar or the skulls. The crew waited, holding their breath, feeling the presence of 1,000 lives around them. Then the chamber stirred once more. The golden pillar expanded slightly, and light flowed from it in thin beams that touched each skull in the walls. The skulls glowed softly, and the silence shifted into something warmer, a feeling of acknowledgement. Mira stepped closer to the pillar. She felt energy in her hands, a pulse that matched her heartbeat. She reached out with her mind as she had before and sensed the chamber waiting to give them something, a gift for passing the trials. "Aaron," she whispered, "I think it is offering us the last part. The builders want us to take their knowledge, their story." Aaron nodded. He placed his hands on the pillar, feeling the energy run through him. It was not like electricity. It was not like heat. It was a living memory pressed into their minds, images and feelings carried from a civilization long gone. The chamber spoke not in words but in thought. The humans felt entire histories unfold. They saw worlds built with care, civilizations rising from cooperation, wars avoided through understanding, and discoveries made not for conquest but for knowledge. They felt the joys and sorrows of countless species, the triumphs of explorers who had traveled farther than the stars themselves, and the quiet heroism of those who had chosen to help others instead of harming them. Solon staggered under the weight of it, holding on to Aaron for support. "It is everything," he said, awe and wonder filling his voice. "All of it. All they learned, all they experienced, preserved in this chamber." Leon's eyes shone. "It is more than we could ever imagine. The builders trusted us to carry it forward. They trusted humanity to remember and to create. They gave us their legacy." Mira closed her eyes and allowed the visions to wash over her. She could see civilizations that had vanished without a trace, their memory held only in this chamber. She felt a deep respect for the builders who had created such a place and for the humans who had been brave enough to answer its call. The chamber pulsed again, and the pillar shifted slightly, revealing a hollow inside. Within it was a set of golden tablets etched with symbols and drawings. The tablets contained instructions, maps, and histories. The humans knew they were more than artifacts. They were a guide, a trust placed in those who had proven themselves capable of carrying it. Aaron carefully lifted one of the tablets. Its weight was light, yet it felt heavy with meaning. He turned to his crew. "We are not just visitors. We are caretakers. The knowledge here is ours to understand, to protect, and to share. We must honor those who gave it." The chamber responded with warmth. The light from the walls grew brighter, almost as if the skulls themselves were smiling. Thousands of lives, preserved in gold, seemed to acknowledge the humans' choice to continue the legacy. Mira traced her fingers over the tablets. She could feel the thought behind each symbol, the patience and care of the builders. "They left everything they had for anyone who could endure," she said. "We are the first to truly earn it." Solon shook his head slowly. "It is amazing that a place like this exists, that someone thought memory and knowledge were worth preserving so carefully." Leon smiled. "And now it is ours." We carry it not just for ourselves, but for every being who might come after. The chamber pulsed once more, gently this time, and then the golden light dimmed to a soft glow, steady and peaceful. The trials were over. The builder's message was clear. Humanity had been tested and had answered with endurance, creativity, and unity. They had proven themselves worthy. Aaron turned to his crew. We have done more than survive. We have been seen. We have been trusted. And now we must take this back, not to claim it, but to continue it. The humans gathered the golden tablets carefully. Every movement was deliberate, as though touching them too roughly might break more than the physical object. They felt the responsibility pressing gently against their minds. Before leaving, they walked once more through the chamber, running their hands along the walls. The skulls seemed to watch them kindly now, the golden glow soft and welcoming. The humans understood that they were not taking this knowledge for themselves alone. They were carrying it as a promise to the builders and to the stars. The chamber had been built to endure centuries, but now it would endure with them. The knowledge and memory of the builders would live on, carried by beings who could listen, learn, and create. Humanity had been entrusted with a legacy larger than themselves. Arun led the way out of the chamber. The golden light faded slowly behind them, leaving only faint reflections on the walls of the mountain. The entrance opened into the barren world outside, but the humans did not feel the emptiness. They felt connection, strength, and purpose. The ship waited, small and humble, against the black landscape. The humans climbed aboard, their minds alive with visions, their hearts steady with the weight of responsibility. They had found something more than treasure. They had found a legacy and a challenge that would follow them across the stars. As the ship rose above the dark plains, the golden chamber disappeared from view, yet the crew carried it inside themselves. The skulls, the pillar, the golden walls, the light, and the knowledge all were part of their being now. They knew they would return one day, not for the sake of discovery, but to honor what had been given to them. The stars stretched out before them, familiar, yet new. The humans felt a quiet excitement, not for conquest, not for power, but for exploration, learning, and sharing. The legacy of the builders had opened a path for them, a path of memory, endurance, creativity, and trust. Mira spoke softly to the others. We have been part of something that began long before us and will continue long after us. We carry it forward, Solon nodded. We are not alone. We never were. The builders believed in us, and we must believe in those who will come after us. Leon looked out at the stars, a smile lighting his face. It is not just knowledge. It is a responsibility, but also a gift, a chance to create, to guide, and to remember. Aaron rested his hands on the controls, feeling the ship respond. He looked at his crew and then at the endless sky. Then we begin, he said. We take what we have learned and carry it to the stars. We honor the past by shaping the future. The ship moved forward, leaving the silent world behind. Yet the humans did not feel they were leaving anything behind. They carried the chamber within them. Every memory, every vision, every challenge, and every creation was now a part of humanity. And in the silence of space, across the vast distances of the galaxy, the chamber sent one last signal, faint yet steady, a signal that told the builders the legacy had been accepted, that a worthy successor had been found, that the memory of 10,000 lives would continue. The humans did not hear the signal. They did not need to. They felt it. It was in their hearts, in their minds, and in the way they looked at one another. They had answered the chamber. They had carried its memory. They had added their spark, and the galaxy was brighter for it. The chamber remained on its barren world, silent but alive in memory and gold. It waited patiently for the next explorers, the next guardians, but the humans had already fulfilled its greatest purpose. They had proven that memory, endurance, and creativity were not just tests. They were the essence of humanity. The ship sailed onward, stars stretching endlessly before them, and humanity carried the spark that no other species had shown, a spark that would shine long into the future.